The following is a preview of the New Models Podcast.
From Berlin to your block since 2018.
Full episodes are available only to subscribers, and there's hundreds more in our archive.
Join now on newmodels.substack.com or patreon.com/newmodels.
And you know the New Models Discord is popping. Patreon only. Stop sleeping and subscribe now.
New Models, you won't get it anywhere else. Locked in with New Models.
Greenroom, a New Models podcast.
Welcome to New Models. On this episode, creative director Ben Ditto returns to the podcast in his role as global editorial director of Vice magazine, along with the storied publication's editor-in-chief and member of the electronic act Real Lies, Kevin Lee Kharas. We invited Ben and Kevin onto the show after catching a sloptacular video announcing the magazine's release of the Not the Photo issue, including many contributions from friends of New Models, Matt Dryhurst, Duncan Wilson, Günseli Yalcinkaya, and in what is the equivalent of a pay-per-view boxing match for our corner of the internet, Dean Kissick in conversation with Adam Curtis. Vice magazine's history is an Icarus myth of a miraculous rise and disastrous fall. And while Kevin would be the last to say that he and Ben are bringing the old Vice back, they're kinda bringing the old Vice back. Sorry, Kevin. While it is once again in print, it is neither nostalgic nor retro. It's not even indie sleaze. Instead, Ben and Kevin are imagining how the spirit of Vice magazine moves through and responds to our contemporary media environment, one in which edgelording is less dangerous than posting something AI generated, and anything real might be AI generated anyway, hence the Not the Photo issue. It's an experiment with little oversight and even less staff. A scrappy team doing their best with a 5.2 million follower Instagram account and a brand name everyone between the ages of 15 and 50 probably knows. And with this rare opportunity, our guests are experimenting indeed, with truth, with taste, and with the audience itself. I'm Lil Internet with my co-host Carly Busta. Our guests are Ben Ditto and Kevin Lee Kharas of the new, old, always has been Vice magazine. Let's get into it.
Ben Ditto, Kevin Lee Kharas, welcome to New Models.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Ben and Kevin, you guys are the brains and bodies behind the current incarnation of Vice magazine, and you are also separately underground icons in your own right.
Ben has had a long, illustrious, at times infamous career as a creative director, including a legendarily weird run with Dazed Beauty, extensive work with the 1975, as well as many fashion brands. He's run his own press. He's runs Ditto Nation, which is a non-linear media world spread across a bunch of platforms. He has a robotic dogfighting startup, Yaya Labs, and now he's the global editorial director of Vice magazine. Also as a cameo in The Moment. Kevin, in addition to being the editor-in-chief of Vice, you're also a co-founder of the electronic music duo and expert vibe engineers Real Lies, which you've described as electronic music about what happens when you listen to electronic music often. You're also a journalist and writer. Thank you both for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Ben is a returning guest, New Models. I think we last spoke to you when you were starting a video series for Ditto Nation at that time, and we chatted with you when you were in Berlin. But we're speaking to both of you now because we just saw the preview of the current issue of Vice, and It's called, Not the Photography Issue. And we were like, okay, number one, Vice has rebooted and it feels very Vice again. And then two, what is a photography issue in the age of AI? Obviously, the title provokes that a little bit. But of course, the world also wants to know,
what is it to be Vice now? How to be edgy when edgelords are in charge of the U.S. government? How to be gonzo when everything real might be fake and everything fake might be real?
So with that, maybe you could start us off by telling us like what Vice is now. Obviously, it's been through a really crazy story over the past 20, 30 years. So what is a mental model for what Vice is in 2026?
I feel like the best and most vivid mental model, it would be represented by an org chart just showing kind of a straight line with myself and Ben at either end of it. I guess in the past we had like thousands of people dispersed all over the globe. There was kind of upwards of 40 different offices, each in a different country. During my first spell at the company between 2010 and 2015, it was this kind of really imperial phase. Ben started working for Vice a little bit earlier, I think like the late 2000s. The infrastructure is still there in terms of like the audience and the reach, but in terms of the people that work on it day to day, yes, it's a much smaller operation. It's fewer than 10 of us. Everyone involved works about 3 different jobs. We all care about it deeply. Yeah, I don't know. Is that like a decent explanation or at least the start of an explanation?
I'd say it's also like we're sitting in London now, which is notable because, you know, as you said, it had the sort of Montreal origin and then it was very much associated with Brooklyn hipsters. Then it was very much this kind of imperial mega corporation. And now it feels very London. Like there are a guy in New York and a guy in LA. The publishers are in Nashville, but they don't like seek to influence us editorially very much. And then the rest of us are in London. And it feels like a very London vibe, which is probably new for Vice. Like the core of it is in England.
I'm actually curious how they decided that London was going to be the...
I think it was just a happy accident for us too, to be honest. Ben and our patch is kind of the magazine and .com, like especially the premium side of Vice.com. We have like a paywall members only section now. That's our part of Vice. There is also, and I'm sure like your listeners will be really keen to know, like Shane is still in charge of Vice News. So this is our beat really.
I mean, it's $2 a month for digital access.
Yeah.
So
It's important to note that if you pay only $2 a month, the gates open to this incredible forum of content, like an oasis.
It's kind of like when you have like a speakeasy and the front looks kind of like a dingy,
Or something.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
convenience store, and you knock on the special knock on the door in the back, and you're in a luxurious secret club. Yeah.
Somebody called $2 a month elitist. They said like, someone called it elitist. I was like, $2
Come on,
is
right.
They're going to have a hard time in the future because you're going to have to pay for anything made by a human.
It's also
online.
funny though, because it's like, you know, somehow the Substack universe by contrast is so mid-ifying. And I say this as, you know, New Models is also on Substack. And there's something that like everything just feels like all the corners have been rounded. And I mean, you know, there are people who
Everything
use
gets
Substack
refined to
in
what
like
works. So it all converging on the same point.
Well, right. There are like really interesting people on Substack, obviously, but there is something great about having a proprietary website, having your content exist. I mean, maybe we can get into some of the structural stuff in a second. I think what I'd like to do actually first is hear a little bit more about both of you. I mean, do you remember where you were when Vice first registered for you? I'm assuming this is like, maybe don't want to date you, but I'm going to guess like 15, 20 years ago. What was your first impression of Vice? How did Vice shape you or find you in the beginning?
Yeah, so I've been reading Vice since I was about 14 years old, probably around like 2000, the turn of millennium. I grew up in a very boring suburban town called Maidenhead, like 25 miles west of London. And it was just this thing that was, all my skater friends were reading it. They get it from the local skate shop. I was the only one at the skate park that didn't really skate. I would just sit around listening to music, working my way through like a 3-litre bottle of cider that would last me from Friday till Sunday night, just flipping through the pages of the magazine. And when you're a 14-year-old boy from the English suburbs, I couldn't really say that I understood anything that I was reading about in the pages, but I knew that I was fascinated by it. It felt like this whole other world could be possible. I remember the pages of Vice were just filled with these strange men with quite snide moustaches and silk shirts throwing up and taking photos of each other, and just at parties where there would be like tons of nudity and sex and drugs all the time, and looking around at my fairly abject, mundane existence in a park in Maidenhead and thinking, you know, maybe if I make a few of the right moves, things could work out a little bit different for me.
And he now owns many silk shirts. I guess like I'm a bit older, and one of my favorite magazines in the 90s was called Answer Me. And Answer Me was the sort of template for Vice very early days, along with Apocalypse Culture and that kind of thing, Adam Parfrey stuff. So I was really in that area of culture. And when I first came across Vice, it was in the early 2000s. All of the other kind of lifestyle fashion media at the time was like Dazed, ID, Sky, Select, The Face, those kinds of things. And they had got so boring and tedious. And when Vice came along, it was much, much funnier, much smarter. And I also, in the 90s, had a big thing for bands like Public Enemy, where like, I liked the music, but what they were talking about, every single lyric was like, okay, I now have to find out what that means. Like, who is Farrakhan? Like, what is crack? Like the UK, you know, we've always been, because of the common language, really interested in American culture, but we've always kind of taken it and done our own thing with it. So like remixes, like Hot Will Eat itself, kind of cutting things up and sampling stuff. And I think Vice felt like sort of extension of that, in that it was full of things that were fascinating that we didn't really understand. I would say I was more into the humor, the gonzo journalism and the nihilism, but above all, it was just funny. And like, nobody else really was. The other fascinating thing about Vice in those days was, how can you make something that's really kind of feels very DIY and has this kind of DIY aesthetic, but is very well produced and well executed. So photography and the graphic design were really high quality, but it also was a container for chaos. And I really love that ethos of like, it can be DIY, but don't make it shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, make sure that the typesetting's good, the writing's really good, the photography's good, but it still feels like it was done by a bunch of people really chaotically in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult to explain now, but it was so funny that we would read each other parts of the magazine out loud. And another thing that gets lost sometimes is the utility. I can't tell you how useful it was as a 14-year-old boy with no idea about fashion, music, girls, whatever, to read like even some of the do's and don'ts stuff, like never wear more than one subculture at the same time, which like Gen Z, God bless them, they kind of ripped up that one. But for me, that was extremely useful. And I definitely, the summers after I discovered Vice were infinitely better than the summers would have been if I hadn't discovered it, because it had so much more fun.
I mean, I think it's worth noting that this is obvious to anyone who's of our same generation, but Vice worked a bit like analog internet until social media internet operated like it does. Like, in a way, it was a kind of network that existed on paper. I mean, you used to go to American Apparel to get Vice, and all of the American Apparels had Vice. If you wore American Apparel, you're like in the world of Vice, because people at Vice were wearing American Apparel. As cringe as that might have been, but you always tell the story of being in like Burlington, Vermont.
Yeah, just like it was like the hipster travel agency where you could go in and any city with an American Apparel, you could figure out where the good place to eat is, where the record store, clothing store, whatever, where a good bar is, if there's any parties happening that night, and you could pick up an issue of Vice. But yeah, you could always just ask the girl working there.
I mean, I made the point before, of course, and it's kind of, I guess, obvious, but the desktop publishing revolution of the 90s, like all the small magazines, many, Ben, that you just mentioned, but I think of like Purple, like this kind of fashion world that emerged.
Also crazy skate magazines like Big Brother and graffiti magazines like Life Sucks Die. And
right. Thanks to desktop publishing, anybody with 50 people in their community could have a magazine. And if you'd be on the train or at the airport or wherever, and you immediately could clock that the other person was like on your wavelength. And so there was like a paralayer of culture that Vice knitted together. I mean, magazines have always been around, but as you say, Ben, like, even though it was filled with like lots of vile stuff and like had this legitimacy to it.
Yeah, I'd say on that point, I think in London for sure, and probably New York, there was this strata of society, which was like American Apparel, certain other shops, Goldsmiths University, MySpace, Vice, and like MySpace was the kind of internet glue that stuck everything together. And MySpace was analogous to Vice because you were more in control of it. It felt like your peers were talking to you. There wasn't the algorithm. There wasn't anything sort of dictating that. And that was the bit of the internet, along with other, you know, things like 4chan, I guess, as well. But that was this thing that really knitted that audience together. But it didn't feel like the internet was in charge at that point. You know, you knew people from going out in Shoreditch or from going out in Brooklyn or wherever it was. And then you kind of converged on that online space. Whereas now it's the other way around. You know, the online space dictates the physical world and it kind of arranges where we meet in real life as well. So I think they were sort of working in tandem at the time.
Yeah.
So then I wonder, like, I mean, it's very fitting that Vice would now be making content in this cesspool that is the content layer. Like, if anyone can handle that, it's Vice. But I'm just curious, how do you think of being a media channel given the way that media is structured now? How do you think of your signal circulating?
Ben and I, obviously, you know, we talk about this stuff a lot. We both work more or less around the clock on the magazine and on the site. And even though we've had like a lot of epiphanies, like really the simplest thing for me always comes back to two things, which is Vice should always be capable of surprising people and it should always be capable of making people laugh. I don't know, it's kind of ironic. We live in an age of endless provocation. And I think it makes total sense for Vice to return to that way of speaking and that way of operating where it is the original provocateur voice, you know?
Mm.
It was interesting when you were talking about the edgelording thing, when Kevin was saying about reading out funny bits from the magazine to people in the skate park. That is just meme culture. That's what meme culture is. Like, what didn't exist in the 90s and 2000s and early 2010s was the mass production of humor. If you need a joke, you don't go to paper now. And I think that understanding the evolution of the function of the medium is really important. Like, we're not competing with the internet. The internet is producing so much deranged, hilarious stuff every millisecond. But what we can compete with is the sort of depth of thought, curation, taste-making, being thoughtful about stuff, you know, working with people who have interesting viewpoints and crystallizing that into something that's more of an artifact. And having these things that play across like print and digital and film and social media. We can do those things. We can play those games and cultures in the way that you can't if you just have a meme channel. You know, Vice wasn't the first thing ever to be provocative, but within youth culture, it was certainly the best for a while, you know, and I think that we're seeking to find where it is now and keep evolving that in a thoughtful way. There's been this conversation that we've had a lot of like, what's the essence of Vice? And like, when we're making the magazine, what do we keep in and what do we evolve and do in a new way? So we brought Johnny Ryan back in, for example, because we looked all over the world at every single illustrator that exists. And we were like, there is nobody else in the whole world that feels as Vice as Johnny Ryan. So let's just get him back. Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, I think that I'm really keen to stress that we're not like on some mad nostalgia tip, because that would be antithetical to what Vice is and what Vice should be. Like, for me, Vice has always been kind of iconoclastic. It's never taken itself like super seriously. And when it has, maybe that's when it starts to lose its sense of who it is. There definitely is a part of what we're doing where we both feel like we know what Vice is and what the voice is. And we want to carry that forward and protect it. But we would never want to be seen as conservators or people that are just trying to protect like these horrible words like heritage brand or like a legacy brand. Because as soon as you do that, right, you've ossified.
I have to say, though, when people comment and say, hey, old Vice is back on Instagram, for example, I know that they mean it as a compliment, and generally they mean it in a good way. I don't think they mean this is a simulacra of Vice 2009 or whatever. I think that they're paying a compliment, which is like, oh, this is how Vice should feel. That's what they mean when they say old Vice back.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got a theory that Vice has been through so many different eras that everyone's favorite era is the one, or everyone thinks that the golden age of Vice was the one that they first came to.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's all these competing ideas and they're kind of impossible to keep everyone happy.
You could say real Vice is back.
Well, there's like a real Vice frequency, right? It's just that same idea that the tree being all the stages of being a tree. So it's like
the
still
seed
the essence.
to the sapling to the full tree
Right.
to the.
What is the name of
seeds
that
going-
theory?
It's just Aztec metaphysics.
It's just the Aztec metaphysical frequency that is Vice feels like you can hear it clearly again. Yeah.
I think the essence is correct.
So that we're not being too abstract, maybe we could just talk a little bit about the issue. Your contributors are Adam Curtis, Dean Kissick, Günseli from Dazed, Duncan Wilson, Matt Dryhurst, of course.
Third world elite.
Right. So it's an amazing lineup of thinkers, people who are like intellectual, but also very astute pop cultural analysts. Yeah.
The history is that Vice magazine published the photo issue since 2001. There's been 24 of them, I think, maybe 25. And it became a kind of cultural institution in the world of photography and legitimacy. So, you know, being in the photo issue was a sign of authenticity and merit and whatever else. And I would say that my favorite issue of Vice magazine that was ever produced, I think it was the 2010 Terry Richardson motorway cover. It was the photo issue. And the quality of photography in there is absolutely exceptional. The design, the curation, the writing, the interviews, all of it is exceptional. And that was my yardstick for like quality. And when we started working together, we were just like, okay, the photo issue's coming up. It's traditionally in this quarter. And we just had a conversation. We're like, it just doesn't seem like there's any point doing a photo issue anymore because photo is not the predominant visual medium. And like, we need to stop pretending that photography has the weight that it had before, or that image making isn't being radically transformed. You know, notions of reality are being transformed. And all of us, the way that we perceive still images and film is being completely undermined by AI, obviously. But I think to pretend that that's not happening and just do like, oh, here's 50 good photographers, is just like, I'm not doing a Timothée Chalamet ballet thing, but like, photographers out there, we love you and you're great, of course. But I think it's just like, let's not pretend that the notion of the image is not undergoing this radical overhaul. You know, as people who have this brand, which has been at the forefront of championing image making in this way for over 2 decades, we should be forward thinking about this. So Kevin came up with the Not the Photo issue. And it's perfect because it's like, yeah, photography isn't the be all and end all anymore. You know, we're not sort of saying, oh, let's just fuck off all photography and just make slop now. It's like, let's interrogate this properly or start to have a proper conversation because nobody else can. Like Prada just did that campaign with Jordan Wilson. And, you know, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but there's no constructive criticism about that. If you ever produce an AI image, it's immediately the worst thing that anybody's ever done. We did a story in the last issue, which was the Deftones issue with an artist called Icy Saw. And it was kind of based on Cronenberg's Crash. It was the first mag that we did together. And I think it's some of the most beautiful imagery I've ever seen. Like, I absolutely love it. We commissioned it and art directed it, but it's so exceptional. It doesn't really matter how those images are made. And it made me think about all those early Vice photographers with their Instamatic cameras. And I remember having an argument online in like 2007 with somebody being like, oh, Ryan McGinley doesn't know how to use lighting properly. It's like, who fucking cares? Like the images are like all of those photographers, they made incredible images and it doesn't matter how they made them. And I think that's the essence of what the photo issue should be. It's like, it doesn't matter how you're making the images. Are these images arresting? Do they make you stop and think? And I think having had that experience in the last issue with the Icy Saw stuff and seeing the reaction from the public of like, oh my God, it's AI. It's like, I don't fucking...
If you've made it this far, you already know New Models is for you. Subscribe now at newmodels.substack.com or patreon.com/newmodels for all of our full episodes and the hundreds more in our archive.